had the times we went to Las Vegas. I can remember a time or two. I can't. Oh,
Yeah.
we went to Disneyland.
Mhm.
And your mother took you around a lot without me too, on different things. And Grandma, she took you on quite a few vacations.
Yeah.
But in the summer, it was hard for me to get away.
And then tell me about when what about your kids getting married? With your older kids growing up and getting married and becoming grandfather.
Oh, well, let's see. I guess first kid was Jake or Rick when he got married to Jan. We went over to see Tara when she was born at Price at the hospital over there. I remember going over to the top of them mountains to get over there. And then they moved over to Delta, and then after a while they got divorced. He moved up north. Who was the next grandkids?
I think Vicky's kids.
Yeah, Vicky when she got married and had Dayton.
Yeah.
We was when you remember she had David in Provo, I think.
Mhm.
We did go up and visit them, and then she used to come down and stay with us quite a bit. But you were up to University of Utah at that time, going to school. So I didn't.
And then talk about Mom dying and that event.
Yeah, I'd been back. I was mayor in Linville at that time, and let's see, that was in 1988, or it was 87.
87, and she died in 88.
Yeah, it was in 87 when I went back east on this. Well, no, I guess it wasn't either. It was in January of 88, that's right. I went on the 15th or something, was gone for a few days, a week or something, back there on this Rollins environmental outfit that wanted to bring a waste disposal plant into Medford County. Anyway, when I got home, she said that she'd been bruised. She had some bruises showing up on her again. She'd had some before, but they's worse. And she had an appointment to go down and see Dr. Henry. It was Lyman. No, it was Henry. And anyway, that was on a Thursday, I think. When I came home, she come pick me up at the airport in Salt Lake. Then we went home, and she said she had this appointment Friday after school. She was teaching school. And so then she called me from down at the hospital and told me that they told her that her blood was so bad she had leukemia. They figured that she couldn't drive home, so I had to go down and pick her up and bring her home. And then she was supposed to go up. That's wrong. It was on Thursday when that happened, because it was a Friday. She was supposed to, that Friday, the next day she was supposed to go up and see this Dr. Bott at the university, or at the Utah Valley Hospital, about this leukemia deal. Yeah, it's kind of a sad time. Anyway, she went and had into him, and they did all these testing on her and everything, and we waited and waited and waited. You kids was running around the hospital for a long time that day. Then when he came out, he wanted to talk to us, so to me, and you guys was there. I think you didn't.
No, I wasn't there.
Wasn't you there?
Not yet. I was living here.
Some kids was with us. Oh, that would have been
Jane and Scott.
Scott, I guess, yeah. Anyway, they went in there, and he set us down and told us that she had this progranulin cystic leukemia, and that she had about a 50-50 chance of living a week. And if if she made it a week, why each week thereafter it would go up by 25%, her chance of living. And that they would have to do a bone marrow transplant. Anyway, he described the condition that the white blood cells was very low in their count. And the reason why they were was because the bone marrow makes the blood cells, red and white. And somewhere along, probably about a month before, and say the first part, or at most 2 months, first part of the end of December, middle of December on, sometime in that period, there was a cell that had been formed. The blood cells, these white blood cells, go through 4 stages, I think 3 stages maybe it is. You got grana, which is when they're real big, they take up a lot of room, and then kind of forget all the terms. Maybe it's just 3. But anyway, in this grana stage, a cell had developed that was abnormal, and it was a cancerous type cell, except that happens fairly often in people's blood system, but they don't have the ability to reproduce, and so they're just discarded off. But in her case, this thing was really a cancerous cell because it had the ability to reproduce itself. And because of the size of the grana cells, they just took over the entire bone marrow area in the bone marrow, and forced everything else out, so she wasn't manufacturing any white blood cells. So he said the only thing you could do is kill off all of the bone marrow cells with a transplant. They'd have to kill it all off with the radioactive or chemotherapy or radiation treatment, and then or both, and then they would replant the marrow, do a bone marrow transplant, and hope that it started back up. And he said the biggest problem in this is hemorrhaging, because that bruising was an indication of how the blood wouldn't clot. And Jake, I guess it was still, he'd still been sleeping with us. I don't think he'd been nursing for a while, but yeah, he hadn't been.
He was 5.
Yeah, but he'd been sleeping with us occasionally. Wherever he was kicking her occasionally, why it would bruise in the bed. So it was, and that's the thing that took us to the hospital, was that bruising. And she did have a kind of the symptoms of flu too. At that time, she'd just been kind of low grade sick. And anyway.
She had headaches.
No, I don't think she'd had any headaches at that point. She got the headache when, the problem was when they started to treating her with the stuff, not even the killing stuff. It was, they hadn't gave her any radiation treatments or anything to kill the bone marrow stuff at that point, but they were giving her some chemotherapy treatment. It might have been partly killed, but it wasn't the final thing. But anyway, they give her some of these chemotherapy, and it makes you so sick. It's just a poison that you hope you can survive, that chemotherapy. And she got real bad sick then, headaches and stomach aches. And she would heave, and that's the problem. Is if you start putting a lot of pressure on your blood system in your brain through heaving, why it's apt to have a hemorrhage. You're apt to get a brain hemorrhage. And they could add stuff back, and they did, platelets, but if you added too many platelets back to her blood through the transfusion, why it would cause stroke. So they had to err on the side of keeping it low enough in platelets and hope that it didn't have a brain hemorrhage. Well, it didn't work. That's exactly what happened when she got sick and was heaving like broke a blood vessel, which happens to everybody. He said you have those little things like that happen and they heal themselves if your blood's normal and you don't even know nothing about it. But where she was so low on coagulating properties in her blood, was it just filled her brain up with hemorrhage.
And so what? She died quickly. She died within a week.
Well, yeah, she actually went unconscious Saturday morning, and we went up there, and it was Monday, I guess, or Sunday. It was Monday or Sunday when she died. But really, the death occurred when we took her off the ventilator. But the doctor told me, he says she's got about maybe a 1 in 9 chance of that being able to stop that bleeding. Let's see, no, they'd have a 1 in 9 chance, or in 10 chance, 10% chance of stopping of draining the pressure off of her brain. But then after that, to stop the hemorrhage, she'd have about a 1 in 100 chance. And then that didn't have nothing to do with the underlying cause, which was the leukemia in the blood, in the bone marrow. So we decided to take her off life supports because the only thing she had any life in was to hit her on the kneecap, why she hit her on the knee nerve. So you had a reaction there, but she couldn't talk. I think she could hear though, because when I talked to her a couple of times in there, I asked her if she could hear to squeeze my hand, and she had a little bit of a squeeze, felt a little bit of a squeeze. So they say the last thing that goes on is your hearing, you know.
So what was your life like after losing your wife? How long were you married?
We'd been married 29 and let's see, it was 29 and a half or 29 and a yeah, it had been 30 years. The next in 88 in June. So it was 29 and a half years.
So what was your like after losing Mom?
Oh, well, I kind of had to take care of the kids and different things that we had at home. And then I started, it wasn't very long after that, I started looking for another wife.
What made you decide to find another wife quickly? What was your motivation? Well, I didn't want to be in that no man's land. I wasn't used to that condition, and didn't seem like much future there. So, and it's a kind of funny story. Over my life, different times I've had kind of spiritual premonitions too that's come along. One thing that was strange about that is for a long time, even before I married Carol, or else right after, Louise, there's a premonition I had, or a revelation, or whatever you want to call it, that there was a brunette going to be in my life. I used to think maybe it was just a fantasy I was encouraging or something, but it always came back. It wasn't a redhead, and it wasn't a purple-haired woman or nothing. It was a brunette, and I never thought too much of it. I mean, it just was just like other observations. It was something that came out. You're waking up, honey. Yeah, you've heard it. But anyway, I had this premonition. There was a brunette, and I had that during the time I was married to Carol. One thing that Carol said too after Leif died is that if she ever died, she wanted me to marry Judy Bishop, and so I kind of pursued that a little bit. But Judy was obviously not interested, so I ended that deal, but after Carol died. But anyway, it was an interesting time. At least I brought in food. And you get a lot of warm, fuzzy huggies and all that kind of thing when you're in that condition, which is quite a bit different than if you're a divorced woman. Like, you don't get all that support group for some reason. But anyway, I just decided that I was gonna do all of the things that they have facilities for. I went to the singles ward, joined up with the single ward. I'd actually been the High Counselor representative for the High Council on the singles ward group for quite a while. At that time when she died, I wasn't. I think at that time I was the physical facilities representative, which is a rougher job than, it's about as rough a job as they got in High Council, being the physical facilities representative. But anyway, I started doing all those things, looking around. Then old Paul, he got well, when we combined the wards, I was the bishop in Lindholm, he was the bishop in Leamington. So they made him the bishop of the new ward in Leamington, Fool Creek, Lindholm, Leamington. And then he just got released, and they put him in as the president, I guess they call it, not president either, advisor to the priest corps, to the Young Men's Association. And he asked that I be in there as the assistant to him, be an assistant to him. So we was going into the priest corps this one day, and he told me that he wanted to introduce this woman to me that was his niece. No, not niece. Yeah, niece, yeah. And so I said, well, that sounds all right. And he said, she's here today at church, so I went and tried to figure out if I wanted to for sure be introduced or disappear. And so I went and looked up the aisle, and I thought it was her sitting on the edge of the aisle, somebody I hadn't seen before, and it was her mother. I thought, Paul must have thought I was really old or something. She was good looking, or Geraldine sure was good looking, but she was a little out of my age group. Then I got to looking closer, and I could see this little brunette, well, she's kind of dark brown auburn hair, I guess you'd call it, sitting there between her mother and dad. So I went up and introduced myself as I remember. Is that right? And I went and introduced me. And that kind of where it started on us getting together.
So what was it about Sandy that made you take an interest in her and decide that she'd be the one to?
Well, first off, she was real good looking. That helps. And then I had asked her for a date, and then I took her on a date. And after a while, we was up at Timpanies, or to the Payson Lakes. I took her up on top of the mountain there above Payson, that scout camp area in that Payson Lakes. We was there at Payson Lakes, and after talking to her for about an hour, I told her, I says, I think I've known you all my life. You're just exactly like Grandma Ashby. And she looked at me kind of funny, like she didn't know whether that was a compliment or not. But I told her they couldn't get a better one than that. That's the best you can get in this life. And so then she had some guy come and haul her furniture off, and we had to hurry things along pretty heavy there. And she was moving out of her house and moving to California. So it was on, let's see, I first met her on the 21st, I think it was, of June. We got married on the 11th of July.
Were you afraid of taking on a woman with 6 kids?
Yeah, not really afraid, but
wasn't what I had considered really as being the thing that would happen. But that I remember thinking, generations unborn will come to pay you homage and glory in the hereafter. And I thought, can't beat that.
That's true. So how was it combining your families at the beginning? Did everything go smooth?
It seemed like it was going pretty good, although the devil, I think, tried to keep us apart. I burnt the heck out of my arms on the celebration around the 4th of July, I think, or the end of June, I think it was. Burnt, I got in a flash fire thing there, starting the barbecue, and about barbecued myself. So I was all bandaged up, and then we went down to get our furniture, and on the way home we got locked ourselves out of the truck. Once I had to get a locksmith to come and open the doors. And then I had got there in Mesquite and got the thing high centered, and we had all kinds of fun. It seemed like there was plenty of forces against us. But we stood up to them. Then the final thing was that in a couple of months later, when we had her sons there and her nephews, and they went out rabbit hunting, kind of unbeknownst to us. I didn't know anything about them getting the guns that particular day, but anyway, when they came back, we had that accident, John shooting Jamie, and the rush to the hospital and everything. It was kind of a funny deal too, because when I think I had Jake and me, and I think Scott was with me. We went to Delton. We was on our way back from Delton. Got about to Brush Wellman there, turn off, and when the strangest feeling come over me, kind of a spiritual experience feeling. And I thought, I wonder what that's for, and what that means. I think that might have happened at about the same time that the accident did. Anyway, Sandy and her brother-in-law, old Rod, was rushing her to Delta, and I don't know who else is all in there, but when we got her down there, why, Dr. Lyman was trying to figure out how extensively she was injured before the helicopter got there to take her life flighter, but she didn't have any reflections or tell that the nerves at least was damaged bad. Hit her on the knee with a hammer and wouldn't even have any reaction. And then we spent about 6 months, I think it was, she was in the hospital. Sandy was most of the time there with her. Some of the time she was home. I was in charge of all these new kids.
So, well, I think what people want to know is, how did you face such difficult challenges? Because most families would have collapsed. Most families would have broken up under those kind of pressures. How did you
one thing
survive that?
Well, I guess it seems like in farming there's a calamity every day. You just live through one and get another one. We had that kind of psychic. And then it didn't affect me as much as it did Sandy, on account of she was the one really that had to put up with the new conditions even more than I did. But no, you just do what you got to do, and don't complain too much, which is just life, I think. And I think farmers in general have got a better grasp on that than anybody else. About the time you think you've got a good deal going, when you go out and like Phil did and find he lost 50 head of cows in one night. They all bloated in the field. That wasn't unusual.
So you were never tempted to just give up and say, this isn't working? And
I wasn't, no, heck no. I just figured there's nothing we can't overcome if we want to.
What did you learn from those times? What did you learn about yourself, and what did you learn about Sandy, and What kind of characteristics did that bring out in you? And
Well, we were just new to being married. And it was the surprisingest thing to me was the poor statistics on a situation like that. We'd written in this handicap book about a traumatic handicap like that in a family. Only about 8% of the marriages, the original marriages, let alone a new marriage, survive. There's not very much good to say about what happens there, but it's kind of like war. Life is a heck of a lot like war. If you can't stand it, you better get out of the kitchen, I guess. Because
you were never tempted to get out of the kitchen?
No. No, not when I make up my mind. And especially with a great companion like Sandy. Wasn't about to desert her, and that had been devastating.
Well, how did your religion help you get through these challenges? With the loss.
Well, it would have been really a lot different if you, especially the kids that we lost when Leif got killed, and when her daughter Heather drowned. Why? If you didn't have the, if you thought that that was it, you'd never see him again, or if you ever did see him again, you'd be singing angels or some dang thing in heaven. That it wouldn't be the same kind of association, or you wouldn't have a life after this life. Why, it would devastate you. But with the foundation that we're believing that this is a test, you just take the test and try to get through it. That's all you do, and then you're given the assurance of the resurrection and being able to, at least if you're worthy and do the things you should in this life, being able to, even become as God is. That's evolution in a big way.
Well, let me ask you this, Dad. You were born into the church. Did you ever doubt the church's teachings, or did you ever have times of inactivity in your life, or did you? How did you gain a testimony of the church? How did you?
Well, I think I really didn't doubt it, because remember once when I was probably about 8 years old, I was trying to learn how to weld. I was always breaking things, especially my guns and stuff, and so I was trying to fix them. But I sunburnt my eyes. Thought I was going to be blind forever, but anyway, I went to the doctor afterward. But anyway, I had the people administer to me, and I had faith that I'd get better, and it did. And that reliance on spiritual things was born in me, because when times got tough, that's all you could do is, and that's what my parents did too, relied on those principles that we have in the gospel. And it's a way of life. It's something that's taught to you young. Why, it's really important if you accept them.
And what kind of advice would you give your grandkids or future generations? Because we're all going to deal with problems and obstacles. What would you say?
One thing I'd say is that, like I've told, I hope I've told all my kids, is the best thing to do is to